attack, fast fatal heart impact, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and packs. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're just freaked out. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirusho here. And now, whenever we last left off, we had Izuku Midoriya, or as he goes by, Michael. Midoriya has been in a bit of an accident. He was on a fishing vessel, and after going into the eye of a storm, the storm went against all odds and fought the boat. There were whirlpools, basically just everything you can think of that was happening in the water was happening. The storm, the wind, it was all crazy. While that was happening, Midoriya tried to help. Some people went overboard, equipment got loose, and Midoriya said on the radio about exactly what was going on. Midoriya's message looping along with the captain's. Now, with that being said, we do have roughly about an unknown amount of time later. Izuku Midoriya. He does actually somewhat wake up. And it's not good. He wakes up and finds that he has a life preserver. And he's just simply trying to understand where he is. Looking down, he can see that the life preserver he has, well, it's something that wasn't there. Where's the ship? All he can see are small pieces of it, and at least some floating equipment, along with a few bodies. Now, Midoriya is simply just thinking, the ship went down, and this pain in my head. If the ship went down, that means that their message probably didn't have enough time to loop. But he hopes it did. Plus, along with that, everyone knew they were out here. So he's trying to think about it in his mind, as a body floats past him. Midoriya recognizing, by the look of it, that that must be the captain. Now, Midoriya can understand it a bit better. After the storm, apparently he must have flown out of the boat, and the captain or somebody else probably just saved his life, gave him a preserver, and probably swam down to the boat for equipment or to look for survivors. Now, that is what he would have done in this situation. However, considering the fact that there's no one around, and, well, he seems to be the only survivor, there is a small likelihood that that is not the case. They probably got trapped in the storm, or swept away by something else. Now, as Midoriya does actually begin to try and swim closer to some of the pieces of equipment, he begins to look them over, and see what he has. Meanwhile, we do have, back over in the mainland, Midoriya, he has been gone for roughly, let's say, 6.5 days. And they would have gotten a radio transmission back from the crew by now. The crew always lets people know that they are coming into dock, and they would have been back tomorrow. They always make sure that they have the one spot to park the boat. That way they can directly bring the fish and stuff out over to a certain area. And since there's no broadcast, it got suspicious. And let's get back over to Midoriya. He has been somewhat just floating around for a full day. And it is reported that a fishing vessel may have gone down in the storm, especially after some people did actually find the broadcast signal. As soon as they did, they began to radio the Coast Guard. They picked up the signal deep out at sea, and there was a manhunt spread about. And then there was a news story. The news story about a fishing vessel going down. And it gave a report on who the people were. Michael, the captain, and other crew members. And it showed their faces. Now, with that being said, eventually Midoriya is found. And he's been out at sea, trying to tread water basically, for almost 3 days. The Coast Guard picks him up and takes him back to shore, where he is taken to a city hospital, where he is given fluids, food, and antibiotics. Midoriya floating out at sea for so long, he came back with a fever and an infection from the wounds on his body and in his back. Now, with that being said, as it is announced that Midoriya was the only survivor, this is whenever the Lycans, they were somewhat investigating it. Any young, quirkless person that they can find, they investigate. Whenever they did perform x-rays on Midoriya to see if he may have broken something, they found out that he'd had, well, no joint in his toe. So he was quirkless. After somebody read that in a news article, young, quirkless boy, they began to look into him, finding out that he has black hair and is somewhat around in age. Now, with that being said, some of the Lycans in the police force began to look into this and try to find him. Meanwhile, you do have the vampires. The Lycans have somewhat been a bit busy, and today, after learning about this boy, they begin to understand why. The Lycans are looking for somebody, and have been a bit more reckless. They've had to try and keep their, well, Corvinus brethren, as you can call them, in line. They keep trying to hunt down the werewolves and kill them. However, they're also hunting down a human. They haven't done this in a very long time. The last time they did this was somewhere around a decade ago. And you have Midoriya in the hospital. After Inko came to visit, she was very adamant about getting Midoriya out of there. However, doctors said that he would not be able to move, since Midoriya was not only just coming in and out of consciousness, but with his fever it made things so much worse. Now, with that being said, Midoriya, he eventually did meet with these police officers, and he had to talk with some of them. They were able to catch Midoriya whenever he was actually conscious, and they did try and investigate about it further, trying to ask Midoriya questions. They had a few questions about what happened with the captain, and possibly other things. Now, Midoriya was able to actually answer a bit more of their questions. However, it's the way that they were looking at Midoriya, and what he saw in them. Midoriya was always told to watch for certain things and a certain smell. And he's not too sure if that's what this is. But there's the way the men are carrying themselves, and the way they're acting. One of them is constantly, at least somewhat, sniffing the air. His nose is twitching. And the other one is simply just has his eyes locked on Midoriya, as if a dog waiting to pounce on a target. Now, Midoriya did answer the questions, but he was still a bit nervous. And the officers the officers actually did say that he should come down to the station a bit more and explain. However, doctors basically had to inform the officers that that was not going to happen. Now, with that, this is whenever, after the officers do leave, Midoriya informs his mother. After he was able to get her back in the hospital room, he tried to calmly explain it to her. Go back home and go get the gun. He's fairly certain that those officers were, well, one of those things. And Inko is quite shocked, telling Midoriya that she brought the gun along. She never leaves without it. And if he believes that they are, well, monsters, which ones does he believe they are? And Midoriya is saying that they're werewolves. And Inko, she actually did somewhat breathe a sigh of relief. Werewolves, from what she knows, are easier to deal with. So, if they can deal with them, then things should be a lot easier. Now, with that being said, she does actually go walk out back to the truck. And the officers do try and talk with her. And actually try to get her to comply with them. However, Inko, she is quickly taken away by the police officers. They saw her not only with the truck, but they watched as she set down her purse, and they saw a weird gleam whenever she put something in it. And since they had reasonable suspicion, they tried to investigate her. Not only finding out that this was an unregistered firearm, but that after running the truck through some, well, at least old plates, they were able to match it to some truck make and model from years ago. And it corresponds to the same city they were looking for a target. So, perfect. Now, with that being said, we also do have the vampires. They are actually waiting. The boy, from what they know, that these men might be going after, or the girl or whatever their target is, they're in a hospital. And they're looking for someone specific. After they do actually send their own people to investigate after sunset, they do actually begin to talk with a lot of people on staff. They're dressed a certain way, and posing as different types of officers. Let's just say that they're more of a heavy duty type, or at least a riot gear type, let's just say. The way they look, it looks like their quirks are supposed to help them in combat. And after they do basically show fake badges to the people on the staff team, whenever they do walk by, that they are left alone, but they're able to immediately start walking through the hospital. And Midoriya got very concerned. His mother's gone. She has not returned. And then there's the fact that, well, he's just left alone here. His mom was able to actually give him something though. She left him the blade whenever she left. So, a silver knife. Would that be enough? Let's hope so. Now, as Midoriya is thinking that he's about to go to sleep. However, as soon as Midoriya does actually lay down, he does hear something out in the hall. And, fearing the worst, he actually does get a bit paranoid, taking the IV out of his arm and unplugging the medical equipment. As soon as he does that, he takes off the pieces on his hands and slides underneath the bed to hide. As soon as he does that, he does not move a single muscle. However, he left the window open. Now, with that being said, as the cool breeze is filling the room, the vampires do walk in. And they can see what's going on. The window is open, the equipment is off, and their target is not there. Both of them walking over to the window, and Midoriya does actually see their lower bodies, their legs, and he does not make a single sound. In fact, he doesn't even really breathe, thinking for 1 second that they are going to hear him, find him, and do something to him. Now, as the vampires actually do look out the window, they try and spot the targets. And this is when Midoriya does actually somewhat think for a second. If he can get one of them in the leg, he can try running. But wait, are they fast? Shit. Now, Midoriya does think that there's a commotion, a scream in the hallway, and then the vampires do go running out, since the Lycans have broken in. Now, the Lycans are a bit less precautious about making their presence known. After they do so, the vampires immediately have to get to work, pulling guns and beginning to train fire silver nitrate off at their enemy. As soon as the vampires do get into the hall, Midoriya just runs over to the window and thinks for 1 second. He is about 7 to 8 stories up. If he jumps out the window, he is going to die. And the only other option involves running through that battlefield behind him. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I just had to readjust the mic. I just realized it was not on the right, angle. Now, Midoriya is currently weighing his options. And he does actually do one thing. Walking over to his bed, he not only grabs the blanket, he grabs the sheets, tying it into a knot at the end of the bed, and then tying it, the other side of the sheet, to the other side. Then bringing the hospital bed closer to the window before just sitting on top of it. Now, Midoriya takes a deep breath in and just thinks, if this does not work, he is going to die. However, if this does work, hopefully he doesn't get caught. Now, there are gunshots going off in the hallway, and then there's a loud thud. As soon as Midoriya hears that thud, he does one thing. He dives out of the window, and then the hospital bed, it hits the wall. And Midoriya swings his body outwards. As soon as he swings outwards, he's able to smash into the window underneath his room. And he's now on the 7th floor. As soon as he lands, he gets cut up by glass, and tries to stand back up. Now, as that happens, Midoriya, he begins to try and pull the glass out of his arms, as he begins to try and walk. Now, he's just thinking. As he walks out in the hallway, he's looking around. No one. As soon as he begins to try and run down the hall, he hears it, a Lycan. And he does actually dive into the room next to him. As soon as he dives in, this is whenever the Lycan does actually walk down the hallway and see a bit of that trail of blood Midoriya left behind, heading into that room. As soon as the Lycan does actually bend down and sniff it, it immediately perks up. As soon as it goes to howl, this is whenever there is a gunshot. Midoriya sees as its body falls forward and goes limp. Midoriya realizing that Lycan was shot. Now, as that happens, this is whenever the vampire who shot the Lycan begins to walk down the hallway. And after watching as there's a blood trail, they assume that it must be a human, and try and investigate. As soon as the person turns the corner with both their guns in hand, they see this young boy. Midoriya just blocking his arms up as you see massive amounts of cuts. And the person is surprised, not a Lycan, nor another one of her kind. And Midoriya, after they turn off their flashlights or at least lower their gun, they begin to ask questions. How much of it has he seen? What? What are you talking about? How much have you seen, child? I haven't seen anything. The vampire turned their head to look at the body. Midoriya can see it clearly. I know that that is a lie. Now, I'm guessing that you must be what they're after. Now, which strain are you? Strain? Which core Venus do you fall under? What are you talking about? I see. The person bringing their head in after they pull Midoriya up. And after wiping away at Midoriya's arm and licking his blood, they're able to see a bit better. Midoriya are watching as their eyes somewhat begin to glow a bit more blue. And this woman does actually look at Midoriya's memories. Now, as Midoriya is simply just watching this woman do that, he's surprised. Then, there's what she does next. She walks over and dips her hand into the lichen blood. After basically taking that into her mouth, she's staring down at it for a while, and beginning to try and put the pieces together. And after doing so, there is exactly what they know. Turning around and telling Midoriya that he must come with her. Who are you? The woman giving her name, stating that who she is right now is not important. However, that is what you can call me. Now, human, you seem to be important to them. So, you are not a lichen. That means that I can take you back to our house, our coven. Stay close to me and you will stay alive. Now, Midoriya begins to at least listen. Stay alive. However, whenever he does find the chance, he is going to try and ditch her. Now, they make their way a bit down more. After getting to the third floor, they encounter massive amounts of lichen. Now, as soon as this woman does turn her head and begin to fire out her guns, Midoriya just bolts off. As soon as Midoriya runs, he immediately gets to the elevator, smashing on the button. The woman turning her head and watching Midoriya down the hall. At Midoriya, he's simply just staring in that direction. As soon as the elevator opens, he runs in and smashes down on the first floor. As soon as he starts going down, it opens. And surprise, surprise, there's a man standing directly in front of him. As soon as Midoriya sees the man, he just brings up the knife, trying to slash at the man's face. The man immediately just, moving their body backwards before grabbing Midoriya by his arm, and stabbing the knife directly up into the metal, holding Midoriya's hand there and informing him that, so, you are a little target. You're lying, you're blood. You're it? What are you talking about? As the person picked Midoriya off the ground and slammed him against the wall, informing him that he is it. He is Corvinus. What the hell are you talking about? Do you not know who you are? What your blood is? Your line? No. What the hell? Now, the person goes on explaining to Midoriya. Corvinus is what they are. They are all children of Corvinus. One born of bat, one born of wolf, one born of neither, born of none. A mortal. That is his line. His line is new and special. The person then munching down into Midoriya's shoulder. As soon as they do that, they're able to see exactly what they can about Midoriya's life. And Midoriya, yikes. He just grabs the knife and directly begins to start stabbing it down into the person's shoulder, after they took a huge chunk out of it. Now, as soon as Midoriya is doing that, the person actually does back off and leave Midoriya alone. As soon as that happens, this is whenever the guy immediately just runs off, thinking for 1 second. This is perfect. He now knows who this person is, and most likely he is the one. Now, as Midoriya simply just slumps down to the ground and clutches onto the wound on his shoulder, he tries to think. Eventually, the vampire lady, she does run down the emergency stairs and toward the elevator, finding Midoriya, mistaking that arm wound, or at least the wound on his shoulder, for simply just dry blood, or at least blood that isn't his, and simply just informing him that he must follow now. Both of them running outside, and eventually they do get into a car, being able to drive away and haul ass away from the hospital. As Lycan and Vampire themselves, they are beginning to, well, let's say clean house. The vampires are getting charges in place, and the Lycan, they are beginning to simply just fight more vampires. As soon as the vampires can, they blow the charges, and the hospital is sent back towards the ground, exploded, and left to history. The remaining Lycan inside, all their bodies turn back to humans, and this can simply be attributed to a gas vein exploding underneath the hospital. They can manipulate people in the media to believe that. Now, with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed. And we are finally getting into the actual story. Anyway, guys, I know that some of you guys probably hate me for the way I do my stories, since I might take forever to get to them, where they actually begin, or because sometimes I think I build up to it differently than you guys would expect. Anyway, guys, I do hope you enjoyed, and have an amazing night. Catch you guys in the next part.